Hi, my name is Kevin Upper. I'm the chairman and founder of Avondale Group. We are a multi-award-winning boutique which helps business owners buy and sell companies. We also have a strategy practice which specialises in creating shareholder value. I'm both a professional advisor and entrepreneur, and I've had the great privilege over the last 20 years of working alongside some of the best business leaders in the country and seeing what works. I visit over 50 companies a year. This has led to me sharing some of that knowledge in my books. I wrote How to Buy and Sell a Business 10 years ago. I had a small section on creating shareholder value. Since then, the market had moved on and our thoughts have moved on through the strategy practice. I shared some of those ideas in navigating the rivers of cash. In particular, the concept that the market is like a river. It's fast flowing and has a lot of white water. And too many chief executives spend too long fighting the white water rather than getting out of the river, looking further ahead and navigating a safer course. Why is it some business leaders make running a business look effortless? How do they achieve flow and how do they create competitive advantage ahead of others? Kogan Page, a top international publishers, approached me after seeing Navigating the Rivers of Cash with the idea of writing a much more strategic book on the subject. How can business leaders in fast-changing markets create more effective businesses in order to gain advantage? And to do that, we need to understand what's actually happening in the marketplace today. I'm a great believer that business leaders need to think contextually as opposed to just in content. Overall, markets have accelerated, but why? Well, human beings have been around some 200,000 years. And we invented this thing called civilization about 13,000 years ago, around 10,000 BC. Civilization was driven by either religion or agriculture, creating the ability to start living in large groups. The Sumerians invented the wheel and axle and cart in 3,500 BC. This enabled technology to move forward significantly. Interestingly, in 10,000 BC, nomads went over the Bering Straits, but they didn't take the wheel and they didn't take writing. So what's fascinating about that is it shows how knowledge and knowledge share is so critical to civilization. The first real mass volume knowledge share occurred in 1450 when the Gutenberg printing press was created by Johannes Gutenberg. We've since seen a rapid movement in our ability to share knowledge. Charles Babbage in 1835 created the first analytical machine, and the digital computers were first created in the late 1940s and 50s following the war. Tim Burnett in 1975 created the game changer when he came up with the internet technology, the ability to share data across computers throughout the world. What that means today is that we are now sitting on the sum of human knowledge at our fingertips. It's no longer about knowing and being expert. It's about how you access knowledge that is critical to success. And indeed, the pace of change is so rapid because we have all those ideas layer-caked and accessible. In previous civilizations, ideas have been forgotten and lost. Ours are collected, stored, memorized, and accessible. And that's why the pace of change is only going to accelerate. Today, 1 in 4 children born will live to be over 100. I can create a template, a 3D template for a car part, get it sent to Argentina and manufactured on a 3D laser printer in 5 minutes. The world has changed, and that means leadership has changed. There's a big shift in the way we can look at leadership. The old way, leadership, the old way, gravitas, command, charisma, persuasion, charm. But there is a new way. If markets are moving more rapidly, then we need to be able to analyse and look further ahead at what's actually happening. And all the time we're talking, we're less observational. So leadership has fundamentally shifted towards a more quiet, humble way, a way of spending more time out, looking at the data, looking at the analysis, researching and listening. Conversations as opposed to persuasion. What is happening? Why is it happening? And how can we take advantage? Those are the key leadership questions today. This means we need to look very carefully at how we spend our time. Leadership versus management. It's about where you spend your time. What research and analysis do you have? Where is your market going and how can you be better? This means we need to design businesses where the team and the management drive the day-to-day reliability of the business, and the leaders are able to go further ahead down river and look at where the market is likely to go, as opposed to following it or fighting the current. This is about research, listening and analysis. And within that context, when we see where markets are going, what new products, strategic alliances and acquisitions or territories do we need to take advantage as the market dynamics are changing? A question for you all: how much time do you actually spend on strategy as opposed to management? Management is Fred any good at his job? Is management? You've been asking that question, by the way, for 5 years, and we know that he probably isn't. Isn't it about time you did something about it? Leadership is giving yourself permission to explore hands-off, whilst the management hands-on run the business. And that's about taking time out to design the business in the right way. As leaders, therefore, when we're looking further ahead, we're looking at the line of probability for our market. What's the current in the river and how are we going to gain best advantage? There are two fundamental ways to create that insight. The first is environmental scanning. That's about looking at the macro picture, looking at seminars, conferences, talking to customers, looking at newspapers, press cuttings, seeing the movements within your competitors. A question: how many of you have actually looked at your competitors' websites? I'm sure you all have. How many of you spent 2 weeks doing nothing but studying your competitors' websites, analysing their unique selling propositions, and then looking for the gaps between what they're saying and you're saying in order to gain advantage? Combining that with mystery shopping, actually meeting their sales reps. Sure, you believe you're better, you always will, but the reality is, where are they winning and how can you score more effectively against them? That takes real time and studying in order to understand your positioning more effectively, so that you can place your organisation ahead of the market flow rather than chasing and following the market flow. The other element, environmental scanning, is around the macro picture. You also today have the great opportunity in big data of looking at the micro picture. What are the demographics of your customers? What's the average spend? What's the cost per acquisition of your client base? If you can get your analytics, your dashboard right, and the metrics coming back into you, you can create analysis of what the trends are in your business in order, again, to see the likely future movements in the market. That then gives you opportunity to design the organisation, placing it ahead of the market rather than following the market. And in that context, we need to work upstream, not downstream. I want to share with you a story. Imagine that you're all on a picnic, sitting by a river. By that river there's a waterfall. It's a very beautiful space, but the water is quite rapid. Suddenly, a person comes over the edge of the waterfall and starts floating downriver screaming for help. Naturally, one of you jumps in to rescue the individual concerned. Then another person comes. Of course, another member of your group jumps in. People keep coming. You jump back in, rescuing the individuals. Then one of you starts walking upstream towards the top of the waterfall. All the people rescuing the individuals shout, "Hey, where are you going? These people need our help." And you reply, "I'm going to find out who's pushing these people into the river." Solve problems at source. Look for the context. Why is something happening? That's leadership. And people won't necessarily, on the ground, when it looks like there's a crisis, understand that you need to solve the cause, not the symptom. So now we've designed the business so it's management driven. We have more time to look further ahead at where the markets are going. What new products, strategic alliances, acquisitions and territories do we need based on the line of probability of where our businesses are likely to be going, based on that big data, the micro picture, and that environmental scanning, the macro picture, which gives us better visibility on the likelihood for our market. And how do we then gain better advantage further ahead of our competitors? What changes do we really need to make? How do you help your customers? Why are you better? How can you be better? Interestingly, I asked this question of a large commercial surveyors practice recently. Why are you better? They've been spending a fair amount of money on marketing and rebranding. The response, eventually, are people. Of course, they believe their people are the best. We all believe our people are the best. But it's not a unique point, simply because everybody is marketing on that point. And indeed, I would argue it's a hygiene point, i.e. something I would expect to have. I would not advertise my restaurant based on good, clean, friendly staff. I expect that. I expect the best people and I expect expertise. What is different? And that's where we need to look for our unique selling points. And if we're looking further ahead in the market in order to anticipate the changes more effectively, so we can follow and create flow rather than struggling against the current, then we may also need to consider being different. It's very easy to look around at what your competitors are doing and actually start following them simply because of this idea of safety in numbers. But actually being the same is higher risk than being different. Competitive advantage only comes through being different and standing out and making the point that you are prepared to be different, so that customers can see where you add value in ways others don't. And if we're looking at being different and we're looking at making changes ahead of others, we may also need to consider disrupting ourselves. I'm sure many of you will remember the story of IBM and how they commissioned one Mr. Bill Gates in Microsoft to create an operating system for their new PC. That operating system was Microsoft DOS. The IBM executive team at that time crucially made the mistake of leaving Bill with the licensing rights because they thought the future remained in mainframes and servers, not in the personal computers. So conceptually, if we look further ahead in the marketplace, we take more time hands-off rather than hands-on, moving into leadership, not management, we can create better business strategy. Fundamentally, however, we still need to change our organisations to take advantage of where we see things going. Change is, of course, notoriously difficult, so we still need some agility. We need organisations that are adaptive. If we're moving into this hands-off space as leaders, then hands-on, our management need to create reliability in order to reproduce the results we expect to achieve the financial performance we want. But reliability is the nemesis of change. it creates conservative individuals. So adaptive organisations need to be designed if we're expecting to make changes. This requires mainly work at the cultural level. It's about being humble and showing people why contextually we need to change more quickly, sharing with them that the pace of change has accelerated, and as a consequence, faster initiatives need to be engaged in. It's about trusting people with an open mind to make those changes by sharing the data and the analytics as to where things are going. Too often, organisations do not accept failure. New things require failure because it's part of the learning process. The Wright brothers in 1903 managed to go about 100 metres. Today, we can have a solar plane that can fly around the world, just 100 years later. So conceptually, when we come up with an idea and we've proved it works, then we change things very rapidly. But it would be very easy with just 100 metres to become demoralised with your new idea. So it's about giving people the freedom to make mistakes and to learn from those mistakes, and encouraging them to pick the ball up and drive the changes themselves once you share where the market is going and therefore the possibilities. Charles Darwin sums it up well. It is not the strongest of species that survive, it is those most adaptive to change. Finally, as leaders, when we're hands off, looking further ahead in where the market is going in order to navigate it more effectively, we also need to look again at our business models. If things are changing rapidly around us, does the old business model still apply? The vested interest of the status quo is our enemy. Competitive Advantage was actually a book also written in 1985 by a guy called Michael Porter. Michael Porter wrote Competitive Advantage, and it's a business classic used by MBA classes throughout the world. Michael Porter came up with the idea that there are 4 fundamental business models. First is cost leadership. This is people like Primark, Walmart, Skoda. The price drives the buying decision. Then you've got being different, differentiation. Dell were the first to come up with the bespoke computer online. Yo Sushi, with their conveyor belt restaurants, were first to bring a Japanese concept into the Western world. The third is product innovation. These are people like Tesla, who rely on the product being ahead of others. Canon, with £680 million spend a quarter alone on research and development. The latest Tesla can do 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds and has a 280-mile range. And finally, you have operational business models, where the infrastructure and the efficiency in the infrastructure is the key to success. Tesco's is a great example of this. Tesco's, incidentally, when they were looking at their data and their data analytics and spent more time getting that right in terms of leadership, managed to save 150 million in 1 quarter just by sharing the weather forecasting with their buying departments in order to assess what ranges they need in terms of barbecue, warm weather food or cold weather food. So that shows you the power of data analytics in an infrastructure type business. And Michael Porter suggested that whichever the business model, they should not cross over. And indeed that we need to look at how we add value in the context of each business model. And by being clear which business model you have, you can gain better advantage. So in summary, markets are moving rapidly. We need to get used to that. It's the new way. Consequently, leadership has moved to a new way. The shift, research, analytics, data, listening, watching. What is the market current? Instead of chasing that current, how can we get further ahead in order to design more effective organisations that flow. That's about moving from management to leadership, looking at the probabilities on a macro and a micro basis in our businesses, observing the data and the intelligence. From there we can create ideas and scenarios. Once we have those ideas, it's about being decisive, communicating them clearly and sharing them with the team. Creating cultures that are adaptive and again, sharing with the team why we need to be more adaptive, why we need to be more agile and the context behind the market changes that are going on around us. We then create better business designs which have higher value and accelerated growth. Overall, therefore, the leader's role is to share what is happening, why it's happening, where we can go as a consequence, and how we can get there. Thank you.